Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of In Conversation. This week I'm very happy to introduce a journalist and author living legend, none other than Mick Wall himself. Famous of course for writing in classic rock magazines like Sounds, Kerrang!, I think Metal Hammer as well, Classic Rock magazine. He's written so many books on Motorhead, on Jimi Hendrix, on the Monsters of Rock Festival, on Black Sabbath, Guns N' Roses, Metallica, Foo Fighters. He is one of the definitive authors of autobiographies and biographies. If you haven't read his work, you really should check it out. He's also been a guest presenter on things like Capital Radio and Radio 1, and he has his own podcast as well called Get Your Rocks Off. He guests on many other podcasts as well because everybody wants to hear what this man has to say about rock. Without further, let's just tell you a bit about him first, shall we? He was born in June of 1958. He's now aged 63. And his career in rock journalism began in 1977 in Sounds magazine. Those old enough to remember and bold enough to remember will remember that magazine well. Back then, the magazine was focused quite a lot on punk, which didn't overly sit well with Mick, so he moved on. He wanted to become a proper journalist, in his words, and write books, which of course he went on to do. But the glamour and the glitz of the rock scene soon called him back, and he found himself working at Kerrang!, the legendary rock magazine Kerrang!. He was around in their heyday with the likes of Malcolm Doane, rest in peace, mate, and Crusher Jewel, who is another living legend and one crazy man. Between them, they wrote some of the most iconic masterpieces of rock journalism that's ever been produced. To name just a few of the books he's done: Diary of a Madman, Market Square Heroes, All Night Long, The True Story of Bon Jovi, Paranoid, The Black Days with Sabbath and other horror stories. He wrote a book about another legend, shall we say, John Peel, who broke so many indie bands in his career. AC/DC, Lou Reed. This is the guy that bands and musicians go to when they want a book written. Currently he's working on some other projects at the moment, and he'll tell you all about those. So without further ado, Mr. Mick Wall.
Mick? Hi, hang on.
That's okay, you take your time.
Hiya.
Oh, hello Mick, how you doing, mate?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
It's I mean, I'm not blowing sunshine up your arse, but I mean, you are one of those legendary, rock writers and reporters. It's people like you and Crusher and Malcolm that, inspired everybody to become rock journalists. So, we're not worthy.
Well, we were lucky. It was all a big accident how we ended up together. And it was just, it was always great fun. And that was the secret, I think, of those times. Was there are occasions, I remember early on, like in about 1984, I'd only been writing for the magazine for about 6 months. So I had to go to the dentist earlier. So if I sound a bit, it's because my mouth is all sticky. I remember reading a new issue. It had Man of War on the cover. And I just remember lying in bed reading it and just laughing and laughing and laughing. There was so much love, you can't be funny about something unless you really, really love it. And so, yeah, I look back and I mainly remember laughter,
That's good. It's good. I think back then, though, I mean, there was a lot more humor in rock. Wasn't all this PC going on, and everybody enjoyed themselves, and everybody didn't take themselves seriously, and then they saw rock for what it was, which was about pleasure and about fun and about just having a damn good time.
No, absolutely. I mean, I first became a published reviewer in Sounds magazine at the end of 1977. And at that point, it was all punk all the time. And although Sounds did still cover rock and metal bands, it was mainly Jeff Barton writing about Kiss or Ted Nugent, Pete Mikowski writing about Lynyrd Skynyrd and Rainbow. But they were sort of outposts, you know, and so pretty much my first 8 or 9 months was all reviews of tiny punk bands in tiny venues. 1 or 2 of them went on to success, but it was hard work, and they were so serious, these kids. They all thought they wanted to be Johnny Rotten or Joe Strummer, and it was just so boring, you know. That hadn't my motivation. I wanted to be in a big black limousine. You know, I wanted there to be a motorbike going down a hotel corridor. I wanted there to be sex and drugs and completely balls out rock and roll. And there wasn't. So I began writing a bit about UFO and Thin Lizzy. And then I left and got a job at a company called Heavy Publicity, which was all rock and metal bands. And then I went back to Sounds after that. By the time Kerrang got going, I definitely decided I didn't want to do it anymore, because it was just so po-faced and everybody's serious, and then Kerrang started, and it just was a ticket to ride, you know, because metal musicians always have the best stories. They're always big all over the world. They're not like these kind of very provincial punk bands that existed back then that were really big in England or Manchester or somewhere. These people would tour America and Japan, all over the world, because it's so theatrical, you know, those groups and that music. It really translated, very colourful and inclusive, not at all elite. And they just had great stories. And most of them were either older than me, like Thin Lizzy or UFO, or about the same age, like Iron Maiden and Def Leppard. But they weren't these kind of snotty-nosed kids that couldn't play very well and just wanted to be on the cover of the NME as the next Johnny Rotten. They actually had funny stories. I mean, you can't interview Ozzy in his Plume or Lemmy or Ronnie James Dio. I mean, all there were so many huge figures, and they were such personalities and characters that the stories almost wrote themselves, you know. And for me, it was fantastic. I mean, I decided to pack it in. I wanted to go to uni. I don't know how I thought I was going to do that. I thought I was going to blag it, because I only ever got 1.0 level, and that was in English, and it was the lowest pass you can get. But in my head, I was going to go to uni, do an English degree, and become a proper writer. And I got accepted at London University, pending these fake A-level results I told them I had. And in that sort of 6-month period, an opportunity came up to do a bit of writing for Kerrang. And I just thought, this will be a laugh. I'll do this for 6 months, and then I'll do what I really want to do. And about a month or so before the college thing was supposed to start, I was in New York with Fast Way, which was Pete Way and Fast Eddie Clarke.
Yeah, legendary.
absolutely legendary. They were a great band as well, and they really had a moment in America where it looked like, you know, they were going to get somewhere. And of course, after the show, it was all drinking and drugging and just crazy stuff. People laughing for days. And it all came up about, well, you won't be doing this much longer, will you, Mick? Why is that? Oh, I'm going to go to college. And why do you want to do that? Oh, I want to be a proper writer. Why do you want to be a proper writer? Well, I don't know, I just want to sort of get out there. And they went, you're in New York. You've just been to Madison Square Garden. Are you not doing this arse about face? Are you not already out there? And on the way home, I was thinking, I think they got a point. I think they got a point. I mean, by then I was first published when I was 19. And by the time I got to Kerrang, I was 25. And I'd worked at record companies and PR companies. And like I say, I thought I was done. But then the Kerrang, I used to literally, like you and I now, I'm me, you're Crusher. And then down the end of the desk facing us was Malcolm Doe. There were only two tables. The other table had Jeff Barton facing Dante Benuto, editor and assistant editor, and they hated each other's guts. So that was kind of like the gloomy end of the office. But me, Crusher, and Malcolm, we used to empty a bottle of Perrier and fill it with tequila every day. We would go to the pub at lunchtime, and then straight after work, I'd go to a gig or go to a pub or go to a pub and then a gig. And I used to go to work sometimes with 50p in my pocket. I mean, I was literally penniless. I used to bunk the tube fare and not get home till 1 a.m, completely blotto, having had a fantastic day and night somewhere. And it just was one. It was like you say, it was completely non-PC. But no one was pretending they didn't want to be big in America. You know, I wrote about the Jam in the early days and the Stranglers and quite a lot of these people. And it was all about, oh no, I hate America. Oh no, I would never sell out to America. Would never sell out. What does that even mean?
I don't know, to be honest with you, because it doesn't make any sense.
It's like I would never sell out a show. You know, I would never have people buy my record. It's like, well, why are you bothering? You know, I was all about selling out. You know, and so that was not even on our radar. And with that kind of those characters on the magazine, and there were great characters, Xavier Russell and his obsession with the letter K. Malcolm, of course, Dave Dixon, Dante was a good writer, Jeff could churn it out now and again. There were loads of them, and photographers, some real big characters there as well. So that combined with these enormous larger-than-life rock stars that weren't getting covered at all in the rest of the music press, and you certainly wouldn't see them on TV or hear them on Radio 1, except on a specialist show at the weekend or something. So there was a lot of money in the music business because these groups were enormous all over the world, but there was no one to spend the money on in the UK. So the record companies just spent it on Kerrang. And so whenever there was a show in town, whether it was a tiny club or Wembley Arena or whatever it might be, everything in between, all of us would go. There'd be about 10, there'd be the guest list, and then there would be the Kerrang guest list. I remember going to see Kiss at Wembley Arena in like 84, and Bon Jovi were the opening band. And no one knew anything much about them. And there was a big party after the show, a big Kiss party. And none of Bon Jovi could get in. So I put John on the Kerrang guest list, and he came in as my +1. And it was like that at every show because you know, Melody Waker weren't going to come and write about Kiss, NME weren't. There just was only a small band of lunatics that were really into this stuff. But we were also into it because it was hilarious. I mean, Gene Simmons on a roll he's like a great comedian, you know. The fact that him and Paul definitely, you know, didn't get on just made it fantastic. And so it was just, like I said, it was kind of I don't believe in coincidence. It was kind of an accidental collision of moments and people and times. And the 80s, by then there's Thatcher, there's Reagan, Just Say No, corporate sponsorship is coming into the music business. This was the worst time ever to want to be a road warrior on the back of a motorbike with an ounce of speed or coke in your pocket and chasing after women or whatever, men or whatever, you know. So it was an oasis. It was kind of like, I all the time think, I can't believe we're getting away with this. But because it was Kerrang, it wasn't taken seriously until it started out selling Sounds, and then eventually Enemy and all the others. And then you got Metal Hammer and all the other kind of copycat titles that came along. But at the time, there was no sense whatsoever that this would last more than 5 minutes. It was just, what we're doing tonight. That was it. What are we doing tonight? And the bands used to come to the office. First time Guns N' Roses came to London, they all came into the office. That was the same with Faith No More, same with Wasp. Loads of them would just turn up. Metallica, within their really early doors, where anybody had heard of them. And you didn't feel, they weren't rock stars. They were just these, you know, kids. And then you go out and take them out, bring them with you, stick them on the Kerrang guest list and get to know them. I mean, Lars used to sleep on my couch because he'd kind of moved to London semi-permanently because Metallica were much bigger here and in Europe long before America. But I used to have to lend him 2p's so he could go to the phone box and ring his manager, you know. But it wasn't weird at all. It was just some kid in a band and bit of a pain in the arse, never shuts up. Yeah, so it was. So I look back now and I go, wow, that was something, wasn't it? That was something.
It was. I mean, my husband's the same. I mean, we both run ROX, and we both talk endlessly about the old Kerrang issues, because we both had it religiously, every issue. And it wasn't like it is now, where it's all very serious, it's all very marketed, and they're very careful in what they say and how the bands are portrayed. But it was back then, you had things like Ozzy Osbourne in a dress in a public toilet.
Ross Halfin was very fond of picturing rock stars with very few clothes on, standing in a public toilet. Read into that what you will.
Well, we didn't know what to make of it, to be honest, back then.
We didn't know what to make of it. Ross is bringing in the new pictures he's done with Ozzy. What the fuck's that? Why is he in the toilet? Why does he have no clothes on? Richie Blackmore in stockings and suspenders. You go, it's just a funny picture.
Yeah, they stuck in our minds. That's the thing. It literally was
in those days as well, because there was no social media. There weren't even any mobile phones until the sort of late 80s, I guess, early 90s for most people. We were the social media of rock and metal. And my dogs are barking, so I think someone's about to come home if you hear a dog barking. I've got 4 of them. It was really important for those bands and the people around them that they get into Kerrang. Sorry, I'm going to...
That's fine, you carry on.
They're 3 little dogs and 1 ancient Springer Spaniel, but they sound like killer attack beasts,
That's what you want.
Yeah. And so we had great access. And, you know, you'd go on the road with the band for a week, 2 weeks, you go to America, come back 3 weeks later. That was normal. I mean, I used to go, me and Ross kind of perfected it. We'd go to Los Angeles for 2 days. But while we were there, we'd just get in touch with all the managements and groups and labels we could. Say, we're here, what's going on? And they would, and we'd say, pick up our hotel room for a couple of nights and we'll do X, Y, Z. And I remember we'd do about 12 stories in 2 weeks and then come home. These days, to give you an example, I say these days, I remember this very well, in 2008, the end of 2008, Metallica were coming to do the O2 Arena. Metallica is a band, you know, I've done an awful lot of stuff with over the years. And I was asked to write a story for the Times. It was their pull-out section, Times 2. And on the cover was Kirk Hammett. And, you know, I mean, Metallica are used to that kind of coverage, but it's at the end of it, it's fucking Times, okay? And I couldn't get 2 tickets for their show. And I thought, if I just put them on the cover of Times 2, and I also have known them for, at that point, 30 years, nearly 30, 20, I don't know, I can't do the maths, but yeah, 25 years at least. And I can't get 2 tickets. And the press officer, who was from those days, so I was able to talk to her. She said, Mick, it's just the way it is now. They don't need the press. They don't need the press. Yeah, you got them on the cover of the Times too, but they had already sold the show out. You know, it's neither here nor there. She said, I've literally got 10 tickets to give to people. And in the end, I got through to Lars and sent him an email. And he just put me on the guest list plus however many I wanted. But that wasn't the point. You know, if you're working for Kerrang these days, or Metal Hammer, or whoever it might be, Classic Rock, or any of the other smaller magazine titles, you just don't get that kind of access, that welcome. It's a hard struggle, and this is even before the pandemic made it even harder. But I remember I talked to young guys who are maybe 10 years younger than me, and most of their interviews are done on the phone, 30 minutes. It's tough. It's just not at all comparable to the way it was back then. Nothing in the world is, I understand that. But that's what made it, all these kind of different elements combined to make it what we now look back as, wow, you know, that was a bit of an era. And with those artists, those fantastic.
Yeah, and all the people that you did make good friends with, and you know, really got into their lives, enabled you to write such informed books, rather than it sort of being third person. And well, it was on Wikipedia. So I wrote a book about what I saw on Wikipedia. Yeah, exactly, you were there. You witnessed these things. You could talk to these people and say, "I was there with you. Do you remember that?" And that's what makes it so personal and so special.
And also, I think these days there's a tendency where it's gone back to, if you are writing a book, you want the band to like it, or you want it to be general. Like you were saying, it's much more controlled. You don't want to burn any bridges. And with the era of journalism I came from, you burned bridges every day. You would give someone a terrible write-up if you felt it was what you wanted to do. It wasn't a case of, oh, you can't say that because, you know, the awards ceremony later this year, we really want them to come along, because that's all that happens now, okay? It was, yeah, fucking give them a good kicking, you know, they deserve it. So with my books, the last people whose opinion I care about are the bands themselves. I only care about the reader. It's only the reader that I care about. And I feel from Kerrang days, there was always a relationship where I used to try and frame the stories in such a way that it felt like you and me were walking in that room together.
Yeah, that's how it felt. Some of the reviews, the live reviews or the album reviews, if Kerrang said it was great, you knew it was great. If you said it was shit, it was shit. You know, and there was and that's what we try and do. You know, we don't believe in blowing smoke up people's arses and say, well, we do think it's really, really good. And by the way, can we have a signed copy?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, it's the only way to do it, and you can always tell. I'm sure your readers can always tell that it's coming from a real place. I mean, I can tell that even just talking to you, and that in this day and age, I think is the gold. You know, that's the authenticity, real opinions. We're so I don't know. Yeah, people are so afraid these days to stick their head above the parapet.
Yeah.
And because there are quite often consequences, it isn't easy to kind of navigate your way around this stuff. I mean, I say the bands are my least concern. When I'm writing, absolutely, that's correct. But of course, once it's out there in the world, you do have to be prepared to be told to piss off. I mean, after my Metallica book, you know, James won't speak to me anymore. Lars will ring me and go, hey, it's your favorite drummer. Because in the book, I kind of point out that he's not exactly the greatest drummer ever. You know?
No, he isn't. But what he can do with a can of Dulux is quite amazing. Sorry, I lost train of thought.
No, that happens all the time. Don't worry about that. I need a couple of pints in me to get a focus. So where are you based right now, Karen?
In the West Midlands. We're in Wolverhampton, just up the road from KK's.
Oh right, the steel mill, is it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we've been going about 3 years, and we had a couple of false starts because of the COVID, or Omicron, or Decepticon, or whatever we're calling it this week. Yeah, I mean, talking about that. I mean, what's your views on all this and all the lockdown we had, and you know, all the venues shutting, and then we sort of opened them again, and then we sort of shut them again, and then we might shut them again. Well, what's your take on all that?
It's very conflicted. My feeling is that there's a terrible, I want to say con, but I think it's more sophisticated than that. I mean, these amazing vaccines are so amazing that you still have to wear a mask. You still have to socially distance. You can't go in, even though you're fully vaxxed. They might not work. In fact, they don't work. You know, but they will take the worst off. They'll take the worst off. I've had all the same vaccinations everybody's had as a kid, measles, all this stuff, or went traveling, various things. And no one ever said to me, oh, by the way, this vaccine, it's amazing. It won't protect you, but when you get ill, it just won't be quite, you won't die. That's how good this is. Well, you might, you know what, you might die, but it's better to have the vac. In fact, have 3, and then this time next year, another, then another, then another, then another. And keep wearing your mask. I mean, I just, you know, it makes me really angry, but also fearful for the world. This summer, in 2019, March 2019, I had ghosted the memoir of Francis Rossi from Status Quo. It's called I Talk Too Much. It's by Francis Rossi, and it's edited by Mick Wall. you know, I interviewed him. I've known him for a long time. But we did lots of interviews, and I turned it into a book for him. And it was big success. And in March 2019, we did a tour to promote the book. The book was called I Talk Too Much. The tour was called I Talk Too Much. And it was basically me talking to Francis on the stage, showing a few videos, and him playing a couple of songs on the acoustic. And we went all over the UK, and it was really, really popular and successful. So exactly a year later, March 2020, the paperback of the book comes out. And this time we did 36 shows the first tour. This time we want to do 56 because it just went so well first time. And also a paperback of a book usually sells more anyway because obviously it's cheaper. And we were 4 shows in when on the Sunday morning the announcement went out that anybody aged 70 and over had to go home and self-isolate for 12 weeks. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And Francis was 70, nearly 71. And that very morning, a really cold, rainy Sunday morning in Margate, where we travelled overnight on a bus, it's over. So we all have to go home. The tour was put back to July because obviously this will all be long gone by then. It's going to be, what, 3 weeks?
Just another 3 weeks.
And then another and another. So then the July thing got cancelled, put back to February 21, because obviously it will be gone by then, you know. As you well know, from Christmas Day last year till April, we're locked down. So then the tour was put back to June this year because there was going to be the Freedom Day. And then that got cancelled. And by this time, we've lost half the tour. We were down to 28 shows. But on July 19th, Freedom Day, we started touring again. And we did 28 shows in 7 weeks. So there were days off all over the place because we just couldn't. Some shows got cancelled at the last minute because there'd been a COVID spike. We did one socially distant show in Middlesbrough because it was literally the day before they had a COVID spike and reintroduced local restrictions. We had 99 people in the audience that night.
It's soul destroying, isn't it, when you go to the social distance gigs? It's just not there, is it?
Sit wide apart, and they're all in their masks, and that was really hard work. Now, I don't mind hard work, but you were asking about touring. Well, the main thing I noticed, Francis and I were quite sort of maverick. We were both double jabbed. I actually had COVID when it first came out. So I'd had the COVID, and a year later I'd had the double jabs, and everything's good. And neither Francis nor I wore a mask once, even for 10 seconds, anywhere on that 7-week tour. Every venue we went to, almost every, probably 3/4 of the venues, it was their first non-socially distant show since before the pandemic. And a lot of these old theatres, like in Newcastle, I can't remember what it was called, but the theatre there goes back to 1867. And the fact that it had been shut for nearly a year and a half, they had rain coming through the roof and things falling apart, and people didn't know how to act. A lot of them were in masks. Some shows, they were forcing people to do lateral flow tests before they would let them in. I mean, again, here's this amazing vaccine, but you've still got to wear a mask. And even if you have no symptoms whatsoever, you've still got to take a test. What vaccine is that then? What world-beating vaccine is that? Or you've got to sit in a restaurant with a plastic see-through screen. A friend of mine said, he went to a restaurant, he said, so I said to them, this makes me COVID secure, does it? They went, yeah. He said, so no air can get in at me. Well, my germs can't get, they went, that's right. He said, so you don't mind if I smoke? Oh, you can't smoke in here. He's like, well, hang on. either it's protecting you from what's coming out of my mouth, or it's not. And if it's not, what are we all doing? What is this about? So that's my feeling. I mean, I hate, it feels like you can't win. You're either an anti-vaxxer and therefore a lunatic, or a Trump supporter, or, you know, something, you know, beyond the pale, or you're a virus masky fascist and a fool and an idiot, and whatever you do, there's no kind of good side to it. And so I find it deeply suspicious, I have to say. I think it's been extremely handy for this government in terms of all the woe from Brexit is now, it's because of COVID, you know. The reason we don't have truck drivers and nurses and carers and food on the shelves is because of COVID. And it's not, but it's quite handy. But it ain't just us, is it? It's the whole world. Something's going on. And I think also my belief is that it's a lab-built virus.
Yeah,
I saw a great interview of these two, I don't know how to say the word, epidemic experts. Epidemiologists.
Bug experts.
Yeah. And they were saying, no, we are, you know, we travel to some of the worst places in the world. We are the most over-vaccinated people you've ever met. But we're not going to have this vaccine because the Moderna and Pfizer isn't a vaccine, it's a drug. AstraZeneca, they said if we had to have one, we would probably have that because it most closely resembles what we understand to be a vaccine. But they were saying, you know, the whole thing about the new variants are worse and more serious. They were saying that isn't how a virus in nature works.
No, they generally peter out, don't they? They don't get worse. They get less potent.
They get less and less. Each variant gets a little more diluted, a little more.
Which is what Omicron means in the original Greek. If you translate it, it's lesser. It means the small.
Really?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? And there are stories coming out right now from South Africa and other places saying, actually, it's not that big a deal. It's okay. But suddenly we're putting on, as of this week, we're putting on masks. When we were traveling around the country, these weren't quo venues. These were, you know, local arts centres and theatres. And we were in all sorts of places, you know, North Allerton, Wareham, all kinds of places, small towns, and everybody we met, apart from a few poor old loves that, you know, just don't know what to make of it, so they just stick to the rules, you know. Everybody, once you gave them permission, were like, this is bollocks, something's going on, but it isn't what they're saying. Meanwhile, people are making billions out of it, billions. And yet we've got to take this vaccine that doesn't protect you or allow you to live any kind of normal life.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it.
While I've got you in full rant mode.
Sorry,
no. Another thing that I would love to get your point of view on, because speaking personally, I don't know my head to tail of this, but Brian May recently got into an awful lot of hot water over his comments on the music awards and this removal of gender specific awards.
Right.
You know, I don't know where this is coming from. I mean, is this another agenda? You know, to change the way people think, because we had all the extremes in rock. We had the gender bending in rock. We've had all that. We've done all that. I mean, David Bowie was one of the ultimate gender benders of all time.
Yeah.
And yet we're all incredibly pale-faced about all this now. But what's to be gained from pigeonholing and saying, well, no, well, you can't have the best male vocalist. You can't have the best female vocalist. It's just going to be a best vocalist. But if 20 years consecutive runs, it's going to be all women that win it.
Right.
Is that fair?
Well, no. There's a simple answer. It's not remotely fair. It's kind of like arguing that football or tennis should just be men, women, regardless. You shouldn't even make the distinction. I'm sure there probably is an argument to say, if someone really is super talented, why can't they play for a top Premiership team, for instance? But should men be allowed to play in the women's tournament, or should men and women just play the same tournament? Because then all the men will win. I mean,
yeah.
So I don't know. I'm a great believer in yin and yang. You know, one of my earliest tattoos is this faded old one up here, which is, it's supposed to be a yin and yang. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah.
It's also fire and water, sun and moon, day and night, male, female. That wonderful combo. And to try and argue that everything is just this one big amorphous blob, and how dare you make any distinctions, is some kind of poverty of thinking.
It is, yeah.
I've got my oldest daughter is in her 3rd year at uni, and the stuff that she tells me goes on. They all have to say what pronoun they wish to be identified as, and there are students calling out lecturers and cancelling them because they've broken some rule they didn't even know existed. I think there's got to be a place to say, okay, definitely no racism, definitely no sexism, no persecuting any minorities for any reason. But after that, and as long as you don't hurt anybody, do what you want and make it. They're always going, well, it has to be diverse, but we can't have he or she. Well, you can't have it both ways.
No.
I'm all for diversity. I'm all for, I forget what they call it, multiculturalism. My family are all originally from Ireland. We're immigrants. I think that's good to promote that side of things and say, listen, it's all good. Black, brown, white, old, young, male, female, whatever. I'm all for that. So how can you be all for that though, but at the same time go, oh no, sorry, trans rights come first. Anybody has an issue with their bodies or their mind, and I think most of us, nearly all of us, I'm sure, do on some level of different issues. Yeah. Reach out, support, help, promote understanding, but don't turn us all into one thing that we can't. This is kind of Orwellian, and this is where I guess the connection to the virus is. It makes us all one thing, and it makes it dangerous and threatening if we're not that one thing. And so it means that you know, whether it's what's her name, J.K. Rowling being piled on because as a woman she doesn't want a bloke coming into the ladies,
which is fair enough.
Although I have to say, you ladies are pretty good at going in the gents.
We that's different.
we did a gig in Northallerton, right? And with Rossi, and the next day was a day off, and it was a Friday night, and they had like a ladies' night, and I think they had like a couple of male strippers, and I tell you what, these girls were going for it. Those ladies know how to have a good time. And we went in because we were parked in the bus outside. They let us stay there because we had nowhere to go the next day. And so about 8 o'clock, we went in just to see what the crack was, you know. And fucking hell, it was a bacchanalian It was like outrageous. And then it got to the intermission, and Graham, our bus driver, he's from up that way. And he said, you watch what's going to happen now. He goes, half those women are going to go straight into the gents. There was this thing where, you know, that thing where you go in and you go left to the ladies and right to the gents. He said, they're going to run into the ladies, find all the stalls locked and taken. And they're going to come running out again straight into the men's. And I said, what, they're going to... He said, no, they're going to bother with the cubicles. He goes, they're just going to squat on the urinals. I went, get the fuck. He said, you wait and see. I'm thinking, he's got to be exaggerating. No. Some of the ladies didn't even go, oh, the ladies' loo is full. They just went straight, they knew what they were doing, straight to the gents, bosh in the urinal, back straight to the bar. Let's have a fucking good time. So, yeah, oh yeah. And that party went on all night, you know. And I love that. I love what, you know, but back to the J.K. Rowling's point. Yeah, I've got two daughters. I would defend their right to have a pee in private without any men dressed as women for whatever reason. You're transitioning, whatever, fine. But let's have a bit of common sense, surely.
People have got to be made safe at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And people will take advantage otherwise. They really will. Especially men.
But with all this, as you say, everyone sort of being homogenized, then in what they term as freeing women, I mean, we don't necessarily feel any freer for all this. I mean, when you think about back in the real heyday of rock, yeah, the men were having a damn good time. So were the girls in rock bands. I mean, the likes of Joan Jett could party like no one else on earth. So I don't see it. I don't see that girls were necessarily put down, maybe by some, but they gave as good as they got because they had to. You know, it's a 50-50 thing.
And, you know, when the girls want to rock, they want to rock. I mean, the girls in girls' school were drinking under the table, you know. But I remember even before that, like in the late 70s, there was a girl called Motorcycle Irene, and she was like a biker chick. She was a girlfriend of Phil, the drummer in Motorhead, for a while. But she fucking rocked. It so happened on my 22nd birthday, I bumped into her in the street. My birthday's in June, so it's a summer, you know. And what's happening? I bumped into her in the pub. What's happening? I said, oh, it's my birthday. She went, oh, what are you doing? I went, nothing. It's like a Tuesday or something. She went, what do you mean, nothing? So she took me out, got completely slaughtered, went to some Chinese restaurant or something. She nicked the fucking lion on the outside, you know. We got back to her place, and she pulls out these red pills. She goes, no, you have some of the... Next thing, I woke up on the couch, and it was the next morning, and I had not much of a memory of what had happened. Just that was one birthday I would remember, you know, at least the beginning of, you know. There are a lot of tough women in the music business. In 1978, when I worked for a time at Step Forward Records, an independent punk label, they had one artist called Vermilion, and she was an American full-on biker chick. She came in the office a couple of times with her mates. It's so long ago, I can't remember the names. So it was kind of like, this is Crazy Dave, this is Killer Kev, you know, this is, you know. And she brought out, so we put out one single by her, and it was called I Can't Stop Fucking Around. It was fantastic. It was kind of like a Motorhead track, you know. I can't stop fucking around. She used to frighten the life out of people, but she was one hell of a girl. You didn't fucking mess with her, you know. I don't know. These, you know, when I listen to I've got a younger daughter who's 18. She's at a performing arts college. And the level of what you can or can't do, what's inappropriate, and I mean, I do feel that you know, we had to move on a bit, but it's gone so far the other way. I feel sorry for them. I genuinely feel sorry for these kids, because they're actually no different to when you and I were that age. My
No.
kids are, but they have to.
I want to enjoy themselves, same as we did.
Yet they have to work their way around this bullshit. I used to imagine the 21st century would, or at least, you know, into our third decade or whatever it is. I wasn't deluded. I knew there'd still be a ton of shit, but I never thought we'd be going backwards in terms of being afraid to be yourself, or be a woman, or be a man, or be both, or be none. That's fine, but don't make us all have to think in the same way. That's the bit I find very, very disturbing.
I think as well. I mean, as I said before, you have done so many biographies and autobiographies of some of the absolute legends like Lemmy and Guns N' Roses and Metallica and Hendrix. It makes you wonder what the people that were following your footsteps, who write the autobiographies of, of course, I don't even know, to be honest, but they're going to be very short books about how they went to bed at 9 o'clock. And they used to be very nice to their grandmother. And where are the rock and roll stories going to come from? That's going to...
I don't know. I tell you what, honestly, Carrie, I suspect the golden age is behind us. Might actually sound very, very old to say something like that.
We are.
And we are. That's the other thing, is we are.
Yeah.
And I think often, you know, music always has a habit of proving us wrong. The minute you start thinking that, suddenly it all flips again. But I don't think so this time, because, oh no, I mean, my youngest daughter's into an artist called Youngblood. Okay, I don't know if you're aware of Youngblood. But he's fantastic. He's completely outspoken. He wears a dress, but he's all man. He's kind of like maybe what a Bowie or an Alice Cooper was in the very, very early days. And he's funny, and he's clearly very smart. So I think there will always be outliers. There'll always be artists that appear to be treading new ground, or going where no other artist would dare to go. But not, I think, on the scale that we knew. We used to take it for granted. We took it for granted. You know, that's what rock was, what we called rock, were artists that their primary concern was not to appeal to everybody in the blandest way possible, but to actually make a statement. You know, Metallica, Sabbath, Priest, Maiden, all these people, I don't think ever considered that they were mainstream in any way.
Well, no, I mean, Ronnie Dio, the subject TV, the most latest book you've done, you know, it was... A lot of people took the mickey because there were always Dungeons and Dragons sort of thing going on, and poor old Denzel at the back. But he stuck to it. He said, "This is the kind of music I like. These are the kind of lyrics I like to write, and I want to sing about this. If you don't like it, don't come to the show. It's perfectly fine." But where are these people, you know, that are going to come forward and say, this is the kind of music we want to write? I mean, I will say that with a lot of bands now going independent and just telling the record labels to go and shove it, you know, that could be a good thing.
I think so. I think the days of, you know, there's no more Top of the Pops, there's no more Old Grey Whistle Test, there's not even an MTV, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but there just isn't the outlet for that broadcasting. So I think narrow casting, I think having an audience that understands and appreciates your work because it isn't trying hard to appeal to everybody. I think I feel that's where the good stuff is. And I don't think guitars, you know, I've got a son, he's 15. I bought him his first electric guitar back in the summer. And and sadly, I don't know much about guitars, but I took a mate of mine, Andy Brook, who's this gentle giant. He does the guitars for Quo, but he also is a producer and he works with all kinds of younger bands. And he came along. My son's name is Michael. He came along and took me and Michael to a guitar shop in Camden Town, and it was fantastic. It was so sexy, and all these guitars, and there were still plenty of young guys in there, you know. And my son came home and immediately learnt the chords to Highway to Hell. Caroline, he had to learn that one because that's what Andy showed him. And has gone on, and you know, you can hear him. So it's still got the appeal. But I think the difference between my son and me when I was 15, because he's at that age now where he just lock himself in his bedroom. Like, he doesn't lock himself in, but he'll go in there and it's like a time capsule, you know. You're in there, Michael, what do you want? You got that teenage boy, Dad, it's really not cool, Dad. There was no phone or computer or fuck all. There was only 3 channels on the telly. So if you had a guitar, or in my case, a record player and a guitar, whatever it might be, I think that's where you dedicated that was where all your interest lay. Now he's got so many things to have fun with and play with. So he's got his nice electric guitar, and he's got really nice, he's believe it or not, I'm a short ass, he's tall, he's going to be 6 foot at least, his granddad is tall. He's got big hands, I got tiny hands. He just got up and could immediately start playing chords, you know. And I'm really hoping that stays with him for life. But I don't for a moment expect him to start a band or anything like that. But you and I, the world we come from, loads of people were starting bands or going to gigs, seeing bands or playing their songs. Or didn't mean you had to be some superstar, but music was a life choice, you know. And I don't know. Well, I based on my own experience with my own kids, it isn't for them. They love music. The girls love music. But I remember years ago when my oldest was she's 21 now, and I think she was about 9. And they had the Lady Gaga CD in the car. Because as a dad, I never get to choose what's in the car, ever. Except now the 2 eldest have both got cars, so I'm reclaiming a bit of turf. But so we're playing the Lady Gaga, and I'm trying to join in. And also, who produced this? What I'm talking about? What do you mean? Who produced? What kind of question is that? You know, does she write her own stuff? And then the best one of all, I went, so a good one came on. I went, what's this one called? And she went, Number 3. Number 3? Oh, track 3. Yeah, that's my favorite. Number 3, that's your favorite. And she's not a stupid girl, you know.
No.
But that's the world. I mean, she's now discovering older music. She's at that age now where she's going back and figuring out the whole history, which is great. But my 18-year-old daughter, who's at a performing arts college and does stage musical numbers and knows ABBA through stage musicals and fucking Chitty Chitty Bang Bang or whatever it is. Her taste in music, which is Billie Eilish, Youngblood, and a whole heap of people that I, honest to God, have never heard of. It's not. There's no sort of reading album sleeves or who played the guitar or, you know, whatever it is. It's different experience. I mean, she's passionate about young blood, and she knows an awful lot about him. But it's, you know, like, I don't think you could launch a music paper anymore in that sort of mainstream way that NME or Sounds or Melody Maker were, where you would expect to maybe sell 100,000 copies a week.
Well, the number of magazines on the shelves is just going down and down and down, isn't it? So
yeah. Well, everybody's accessing their phones and their devices. So I you know, I wonder if you know, like when television came in and they said it killed the movies, it definitely had an impact. But at its lowest ebb, suddenly came a new generation of directors and actors and film writers that suddenly started making great work. So I hope that we will. I mean, people come. I remember in the 90s. I suppose there was a lot of new bands in the 90s. So you can't compare. But I'm so out of the loop now. I don't get music by new groups particularly unless I'm doing a story on them. I mean, the Wild Hearts are a great band, but they've been around now for 30 odd years. You know, to me, they still feel fresh and cutting edge, and I think they are. I love Chindrang. He's very, very, very talented. But no, he can't be considered a new generation artist. But I just hope there'll be more like him or of that ilk. But I don't know. I honestly don't know, Carrie. I think it's kind of in the balance. I really do.
yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking of doing a book called Last Chance to See, and just writing about these bands that we know for sure just only have so much time left. You know, AC. Do you remember that scene in Only Fools and Horses where Trigger is talking about his broom and how
Yes.
he's used the same broom for 20 years? Oh yeah, I've replaced the handle 5 times. I replaced the head 8 times. And Dilboy's going, well, it's not the same broom then, is it? Oh no. Yeah. You look at AC/DC, for example, just one example. When Angus goes, can they carry on? You know, probably not. Kiss are talking about bringing in people just to put the gear on.
Yeah, they said as long as somebody performs Kiss, then it's Kiss. Which, I don't know, doesn't make any sense to me.
No, I don't think that's true at all. I mean, they've got this advantage of having the cartoon costumes. But you know it's Gene and Paul. And you know those two are really complicated, fucking weird people. If it's now Fred and Jim, I can't see the same excitement. You know, it'll be like a hologram or an exhibit or a tribute band. You know,
how do you feel about that? The holograms.
I saw the Dio one, and it was still very sort of rudimentary. It was meant to be really state of the art, but it looked like they built it on a few images because it became quite repetitive. But I didn't mind it at all for 2 or 3 numbers. There was a big novelty aspect to it. But I thought, yeah, I could see this in Las Vegas or a traveling show, or, you know, like it's on for a week in Birmingham, or it's on for a week in London or Manchester or something. Like that sort of thing. I could sort of see it. But it's a bit creepy.
Yeah, it's almost like having, you can imagine it outside a mausoleum sort of thing. It's just, I don't know. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Star Wars, where Princess Leia jumps out of that machine. Come rescue me. Come rescue me. Because I just remember endless images of Dio in his hologram, like, and the next song, fucking hell, find some more material, you know. I think probably with the way technology is advancing, I think there will be at some point in the future, far future or near future, where you'll probably be able to summon up a classic show from 1975 or 86 or 93 or whatever it might be, and watch it in your own home.
Mm.
I mean, I think that to me is one of the really frightening things about the virus, the cancel culture, this idea that it's not safe to go outside, it's not safe to have friends around. This stuff is really, 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 really dangerous to me and threatening. And but I do see it as kind of symptomatic of where the world is going. It's just that we're being hurried along, and I hate that.
Mm.
So I guess it sounds very pessimistic, but I feel the world's in a very pessimistic place at the moment. And that's one of the reasons why going to a gig is actually really great right now, because it feels a bit like, you know, the last show on the Titanic or something. You don't know when you're going to, you know, shall we go and see the Wild Hearts? No, I'm going to see them in February. Are you?
You might not.
You might not, mate. You don't know. You have no idea. So I think generally because of this whole world that we've entered into in the last nearly 2 years, I do find it really, really disturbing, and I pine for the days. You know, I find it hard now when you watch TV and you see a show from 2019 or before. 2019 is particularly acute for me because it's so close. And it nearly kills me because I feel like we've lost it. I feel that world's gone.
Mm.
Now, when the first lockdown ended, my wife, because we had kids, we didn't go out for 10 years when we first had kids. I became a dad very old. I was 42 when we had our first daughter. My wife's a lot younger. And finally, in about 2018, 2019, we were able to go to the pub on our own. Not for long, just a couple of drinks, but my God, just to get out of the fucking house. And by the end of 2019, the eldest is 19, the youngest is 16 at that point. So, you know, it's okay. Mum and Dad could pop out. And we got to know the people in the pub and the people in the restaurant. And after that first lockdown, when it was eat out to help out, I couldn't wait to go back. Because first of all, I wanted a pint of draft beer. And two, I just wanted to, and I remember we went into this place we used to go. And I went to go straight to the bar, as we always did. No, can't go to the bar. Oh, have you sanitized your hands? Oh, okay. Okay, we're going to allocate you a place to sit. And then you've got to order. We're standing right here, but you've got to order on the app. And then, you know, the screens and all this. And a lot of the people that we knew had gone, because a lot of them come from Eastern Europe or places like that, and they'd gone. And I said to Linda, my wife Linda, I said to Linda, this place was called the Old Post Office, because many, many years ago it was a post office, and now it's like a bar and a restaurant. Really fun place. And I live out in the countryside, so ain't that many fun places. This was a great fun place. I said to her, the old post office that we used to come to, I said, I know we're sitting here right now, but that place doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. It's fucking gone. You know, shall we pop out for a drink tonight? I don't know, better check on the app.
Mm.
Oh, and you have to leave after 2 hours. It just kills it for me. It kills everything for me. And I can't help feeling that that's like you, I believe it was built in a lab. And I see lots of people profiting extraordinarily.
Oh yeah, there's obscene amounts of money being made from people's misery.
Yeah. A cousin of mine in Ireland sent me a WhatsApp today saying to do with something else we were talking about, and she said we're talking about, you know, the new rules and all that, because they're talking about making them compulsory, aren't they? And she said, as far as I'm concerned, the same people that have made the vaccine are the same people that made the virus. You know, You build your market and then you sell your shit to it, don't you?
Exactly.
Now, I know that sounds, a lot of people, oh, conspiracy theory, paranoid.
Well,
What
it's
about
easy
government?
to say that, though, isn't it? You know, you get people that do say that and say, "Oh, you're one of these ones that wears a foil hat." You know, so I think it's not. It's just seeing the world for what it is, because we do have the benefit of hindsight. We've seen all the different fun and games that governments have played in the past, and you know, in terms of fake wars and chemical weapons,
Absolutely.
and all the things that we've gone through, where it was an absolute fact that Saddam Hussein was a terrorizer of the world, and we don't stop him, then we're all doomed, Captain Mannering. But
Absolutely. I was watching a document on the telly, watching a documentary on the space race. And one of the episodes began with Lyndon Johnson, who was the president at the time. This is like about a year after Kennedy's assassinated. And the thing was, will they carry on with the space exploration now Kennedy's gone? And he came out and made this speech about how they would carry on. But it was all framed. He said literally, you know, we're doing this not just for America, but we're doing this for world peace. We will be sharing everything with the world, including our friends in Russia, you know. And he gives this very kind of wow speech. And then it ends and the voiceover goes, at the same time Johnson was giving the speech, he had already given the orders that none of this would be shared with anyone ever.
yeah.
And in fact, the big reason for spending all that money on this technology was for arms. You know, it was
for the Polaris rocket system.
Absolutely. It was all about making sure we can destroy the fucking world if we want to.
Mm.
So here you've got the guy telling the world, everybody's going, oh, it's great, you're going to man on the moon, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, it's a completely different story once he walks away from the camera. And like you say, we've seen it a million times now. So why are we buying it all over again? You know, the NHS is overwhelmed. I have various ailments. My kids, my wife. We went to, for various reasons, we went to 4 different hospitals during the first, between the first and during the first and second lockdown. And one of them was a respiratory unit because I had a chronic lung disease. Touch wood, I've been discharged.
That's good.
Yeah, but I had to go back every 6 months, and then as it started to get better, once a year. So I'd been to, it was at the place called the Churchill Hospital, which is massive in Oxford. And it's where all the serious things, the cancer and all this stuff, respiratory disease. And the respiratory unit, I've sat in that waiting room a million times. It's always packed. And you go into the room, and that's like, it's like a scene out of Holby when they're going nut. BP's falling, you know, it's all like people running around like headless chickens, and you know. So I had to go there. I'm going to say June 2020, but right at the time when, you know, I mean, my wife couldn't even come in with me. I had to go in on my own. I was the only person in the waiting room. I got straight in, and it was empty. And it so happened the nurse I got, or sorry, junior doctor I got, had only just begun. She was telling, I said, it's quiet here, isn't it? And she went, yeah. She said, I only started in May, and I've had hardly anything to do. This is the respiratory unit, you know, COVID. And I didn't want to spook her or make her feel that it was any of this was her fault. But I said right at the end of it, I said, so you get a lot of COVID patients? She went, no, none. I think they've got a few at the JR. The JR is John Radcliffe. It's the other really big hospital in Oxford. Because I think they've got a few at the JR. I'm thinking they've got a few at the JR, and here in the respiratory unit of the Churchill, the mega lung disease place, nothing. And so then you go, I know, mate. I mean, oh, you're mad, you're turning into Ted Nugent, you know. But with my own eyes, I'm going, these fucking places are empty. My GP surgery, I have a repeat prescription, so I have to go in there once a month, and of course that's been a nightmare. But just recently, it started to. You still can't. You know, the waiting room is empty bar 2 people. You know.
Mm.
Or you wait at the dispensary, and you're waiting at the dispensary, and you're just looking around, and you see them with their masks off, having a good old chat and a cup of tea. As soon as they see you, they're like, oh, you know, no, we're overwhelmed. You know, are you fucked? You're leading the life of Riley. Now, I'm not saying that's the same everywhere. But clearly, people have died, but I just don't buy it, Carrie. I just don't.
No.
I don't believe what we're being told.
But that's your way of thinking. That is a journalist and a reporter's way of thinking. Is analysing. You know, you get stories come in and you question it, because that's what we're trained to do, is question it. You don't print it until you've found out whether at least 80% of it's true and the other 20% is bullshit.
which is about
well, you can blag the 20% and say, well, I might have misheard.
Oh dear.
But anyway, on a positive note to end, Mick, because I don't want to keep any more of your precious time, mate, because you're really good of you to talk to me. What's next for Mick Wall? What are you going to do?
Okay, well, I'm just going to turn this fire off, Carrie. Hang on.
Yeah, you carry on.
I was freezing when I came in here, and now I'm starting to sweat. The next book that comes out is, I've been working with Stephen Wilson of Porcupine Tree. He's been chased by publishers for years to do his own autobiography. And he's always said no, partly because, in his words, my life is boring. No one would be interested. I don't do drugs. I've never had a hit single. I'm not one of those guys. But of course, his life is extremely interesting. He's a very interesting artist. And so, to cut a long story short, I had a mutual friend that put us in touch. And this is literally this time 2 years ago, long before the pandemic. And so Stephen and I swapped a few emails, and I was trying to explain to him that it doesn't have to be, I was born in 1960 or whatever. And you know, there's ways that we could do it that would be more like his music. We could make it non-chronological. We could make it thematic. We could do. He's even got a couple of short stories in there. You know, we could have a lot of fun with it. And so then we met up early January 2020, and both of us had really busy years coming up. And so we said, right, this is cool. Let's get back to this. He had his album coming out. He was going to do the O2 Arena. I was going off for 11 weeks and 56 shows with Francis and other things, other books already in the pipe. And then March 20 or whatever it was, the first lockdown. And about a week into it, he emailed me and said, I don't know about you, but I'm doing fuck all. My album's been put back. The show's cancelled. Your tour is cancelled. What are you doing? Now, I was working on books, but I said, nothing. So we did the whole thing via Zoom. Took about a year and a half. I saw him again face to face, I want to say 2 months ago. And it was very kind of normal. And the book's called Limited Edition of One. And there's a subheading, I can never quite remember what it is. It's one of those sort of really straight ones, like how to make it in the music business without being part of the mainstream, something like that. But the book's called Limited Edition of One. And that comes out in March. There's also going to be a special edition, which is a kind of supplemental book. It's not the same book with added bits. It is literally a secondary book about half the size. And there's lots of visuals in there. lots of crazy stuff. I can't really get into the detail of it because
Quite understand.
That'll be his job come March.
Yeah.
But it is an extraordinary project. And the thing is with Stephen, he can write. You know, I mean, Francis, bless him, he can't write. I mean, Ronnie Dio did a lot of the opening chapters by hand. And Ronnie was a smart guy. He would read a book in a day, you know. I can't do that. But he wasn't a writer. He'd never written a book. So that's normal. That is normal. But Stephen, we would talk like you and I are talking right now, and I'd record it all, and then I'd get it transcribed, and then I'd work on that, weed it out for the ums and the repetitions, and try and pick up on whatever themes emerge, like our conversation today. And then send it to him, and then he'd look at it and start kind of working on it, and then he'd send it back to me, and we just did that until it became obvious that that one's done. So it was a great experience because he can write. I mean, he's not a writer; he's never done a book before, but smart guy, fun guy. So that's good. And also, from my point of view, I'm really into my new Patreon site. I've just been banned from Twitter.
Yes, I did hear.
For calling Boris Johnson a cunt repeatedly. I'd already been suspended twice for doing it, and then I just couldn't help myself. I did it some more.
Good for you.
That's it. Yeah, they said, and even if you try and sneak back, we will find you and ban that too. I'm like, wow, public enemy number one.
Yeah, there's a lot of hate there.
Yeah, I mean, again, this whole. So I've kind of been cancelled on Twitter and accused of hate speech. I kind of like, well, it's true, I do hate the cunt, you know. But
as does about 93% of the population.
So, but the Patreon thing is good. I'm doing this podcast, and the Patreon, there's stuff on there that isn't. There's a weekly podcast I try and put out on Spotify and Apple.
Yeah.
But if you go to the site, there's some pods that don't get put out. I'm doing two. I did two more today with John Houghton, but I'm doing two more tomorrow with a guy called Harry Patterson, who's a writer, loves his rock. He's from Nottingham. Well, he's from Scotland originally, but he lives in Nottingham. And but he mainly writes. He's got a regular job, but he mainly writes about politics. But he's mad, crazy metalhead, progressive rock guy, very argumentative. And he and I have some real old Barneys, you know. So I'm going to do two with him tomorrow and put them out. I'll probably put one just for Patreon and then the second one up for everybody. And the idea really is I want to do, like you were saying about bands telling labels to fuck off and doing their own thing. That's where I'm at. So, you know, this is my living. So I have to do the books that pay some money. I have to do the magazine stuff that pays some money. It's too late for me to learn. The only other jobs I've ever done have been dishwasher, labourer, tree surgeon, apprentice tree surgeon, said waiter, dishwasher. I said dishwasher, yeah, gardener, furniture remover, cash in hand jobs. You know?
Yeah.
So I'm completely underqualified to do anything else, and it's too late now anyway. Yeah, fucking too late now. So, you know, I don't want to turn my back on that because I can't. I got the kids and the wife. And oh my God, you know, 4 dogs, a house rabbit, and a guinea pig. But really, you know, I ain't getting any younger. I desperately want to get my own stuff out there. And I've had ideas for ages, years and years and years. I've managed just about twice in my whole life to get a couple of things out that are really my work. And they always seem to be very popular with readers. So I want to try and see where that takes me. I want to see if I can build some kind of avenue where I can put books out that aren't ghosted memoirs, unless someone comes along and says, look, here's lots of money or enough money to live on for a few months. Do my book. Oh yeah, fine. It's a job. I need a job. But that's where my kind of energy is the Patreon. And so far it's got some blogs, some short stories, a poem, the poem called Really Fucked Up, just to give you it's not like I wandered lonely as a cloud, you know. Some videos, pods, and I'm gonna want to do some live streaming and things like that. But it's really time consuming, and obviously there's not a hell of a lot of money, it's like pennies at the moment. But if ever there's a way back to any kind of normality, I want to do some live shows as well.
Please do.
I did a live show in Wolverhampton.
Yes, I remember it.
At the what's it
Robin?
called? The Robin
yeah.
2. Yeah. In
Bilston. Costa del Bilston. Has its own chip shop and mousy cold running water.
They put me up for the night in a room above the Bilston, the Robin. And it was like going back to, it was like that program Life on Mars. It was like I was going to say
40 Towers.
Oh no, that would have been posh. No, this was like a bed sit in 1972. There's springs on the mattress, you know. It's like really like fucking hell, bare bones. I bet they had prison cells nicer than this, you know. Yeah, so that was my luxurious accommodation that night.
That is luxury for Bilston.
Yeah. But there was only about 50 people there, so I didn't go on the stage because that would have been ridiculous. So I stood in front of the stage while people sat with chairs and tables and drinks and just told some stories, and we all had a good laugh. And then at the end, I set up my own little merchandise table and personally sold books.
Why not?
Well, yeah, exactly. And then when I drove home the next day, I crashed the fucking car. So that was, I actually lost money on that one. Well, no, I suppose not too bad because it was insurance went up. But I'd like to do more of that. That was a bit kind of out there. And the idea was I was going to do that, see how it went, and then do some more. And then literally this Francis Rossi thing came round the bend. And there I was stuck doing another book for the money. And then the tour, which was really interesting. I learned a lot doing that. So now I don't know. I think Patreon for me is the key because I don't have to ask permission. Is this a story people will buy? Is this a book people want? And the pod is very popular. People really like it. And before lockdown, because I did a previous pod called Dead Rock Stars, there was talk of doing some shows called Dead Rock Stars. So it's always been sort of bubbling in the background. So I'm just, the main thing is I just hope the fuck, Gary, that we get out the other side of this. I don't think we'll get out and go, whoa, it's like 2019 again. That's gone. But I just hope that we can interact a bit more and actually go to the Robin or a pub or anywhere and just have a bit of fun and tell a few stories, because people love a story, don't they? And
absolutely, and that's our business. That's our bread and butter, is stories.
Yeah, and rock stars, the ones we like, they have in the music business,
they have the most amazing stories.
The best stories in the world. A lot of these are people who truly don't give a fuck.
Yeah,
and have just made a dream a reality, but also this incredibly fantastic music, exciting music. I mean, you mentioned KK. I mean, fucking hell, what a character! What a character! So that's my hope, is that somehow Patreon will be my.
We do wish the very, very best of luck. And if you are ever back in the Midlands, please don't stay at the Robin. But if you are ever back in the Midlands, do let us know, because I'd love to catch up with you in person and have a good old natter to you. Because
and maybe a little drink or two.
Oh, or 3 or 4.
You're on. You're on.
It's a deal.
And listen, Carrie, when you've done whatever you want to do with this, if you send me a link, I'll spread the
we'll
word
do.
and I'll let people know.
And I'll put all the links to your Patreon and your podcasts and everything on the thing as well. So we'll push it as much as we can.
Bless your heart. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Mick, for taking the time. It's been an absolute blast. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Or for me too, Carrie. For me too. All right.
Best of luck. Bye-bye. Keep well.
You too. Bye. Have a good
Bye.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.